Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, YouTubers, wherever you are on this wonderful planet of ours. Greetings from Scotland, Inverness. So, this is my first review of the Honda Goldwing, and I thought what I would do is a little comparison, first of all, between the BMW R1250 RT and the Honda Goldwing. Now, while there's a few of you out there who will go, hey, they're different types of bike, and they're not really comparable. But I sold the RT to buy the Goldwing, so it's my comparison. And a few people have asked me how I'm getting on, so this is how it's going to be. I don't have any riding footage at the moment. That has been due to one or two cock-ups on my part, one or two technical issues, and the fact that it's proving quite challenging finding a good camera mount for the bike. I did do it, and I did do a good film, but I had music going. So one of the big benefits of the Goldwing is music plays and it plays out loud. However, if you film it and you try and upload it to Google, it bounces it out because you're breaching copyright laws. Well, not you, me. So as I'm not going to get to ride for a couple of weeks, I thought I'm going to have to do it sitting down and then doing some filming of the bike when it's static. No real bad thing really, because I can show you a few things in more detail. Anyway, so I thought what I'd do first of all is compare the RT to the Goldwing, and I'm going to do three things specifically where I think the RT is a better motorcycle than the Goldwing, and then three things where I think the Goldwing is a better motorcycle than the RT. So let's do three things first of all where the RT is a better motorcycle, in my humble opinion, than the Goldwing. So number one is fuel consumption and economy. On the RT, in fact on pretty much every BMW I have had, one of the big benefits of them is they are really economical. And on the RT, I was getting around about 55 miles per gallon as a combined set of riding of fast, slow, steady, unsteady, whatever you want to call it. People who have commented on my channel, they're getting more, but that's what I got. I never really got it to go any better or any worse. If I was hooning around and having great fun in dynamic mode, that would probably go down quite a lot, but probably down to around 42, 43. And if I was riding really steady, say going down the A9, then 70 miles per gallon. Overall, get a nice average of around about, well, not around about 54.8, which was the last recorded consumption figure that I had before I sold the bike. In terms of range, I could get an indicated range of over 320 miles. In terms of practical range, I could ride the RT from here in Inverness down to Lockerbie, which is on the borders, about 15 miles in front of England, where I have a nice hotel I stay at. That is a distance of 225 miles, and I could do that on one tank with enough left over for comfort. Normally showing about 60 miles of range left. And had I ridden a bit steady, I tend to ride fairly steady on the motorways, and certainly down the A9, which is average speed camera controlled, I'd get very high economy. And as I got through towns and a bit more spirited riding, if I was off the motorway, then it would go down a bit. But I always thought 225 miles in one hit on one tank was pretty damn good going. The Goldwing has an 1800cc engine and is 6 cylinders, and it is a tad more thirsty than the RT. I'm currently getting, I think, low to mid 40s mile per gallon. After 1,000 miles, it has been improving really journey by journey. I currently can get an indicated tank range of about 220 miles. When I first fill it up now, I get an indicated tank range of 195 miles, whereas on the RT it was over 230 miles. But once you start going and you're riding in a conservative manner, then I'm getting indicated tank range of between 210 and 230 miles, which actually is fine. But on that same journey, from here in Inverness down to Lockerbie and my nice little hotel, I now stop at Perth and I top up. So that first, it's about 105, 110 miles between here and Perth at the BP station there I fill up at, and I generally get about 8-9 litres in there. So it's by no means looking empty, but that is nothing to carry me all the way down to Lockerbie and have that additional fuel for comfort and for confidence. The second area is the panniers. So I don't like bikes with top boxes, generally because I find them too big for some things and too small to really be useful. So I tend to go for the bagger type bike or bikes without top boxes. The one exception I have to that has been my GS, which actually always like the top box on the GS. On the RT, the panniers are pretty generous, nicely integrated. You can take them on, take them off, and the lids, when you open the lids out, you can get quite a lot of stuff in there. And in fact, the lids work very well as sort of storing stuff where you're cocking about and messing about when you're waiting with the bike. So I always found the panniers on the RT as to be, I think probably, I would argue, the best there is on a motorcycle. On the other hand, the panniers on the Goldwing are pants. So they are very nicely integrated, similar to the RT, but they're not removable. It's just really, they are fixed to the side. The entrance to them, so you can take under them, the open side open, same as the RT, but there is quite a narrow entrance to them. So if I do my laptop test, can I put a laptop in my bag? I can't on the Goldwing. I can get it in, I can just wiggle it around and in it goes. For day-to-day riding, for normal stuff, it's not a problem because I don't pack panniers anyway, but I do keep waterproof spare gloves, screwdrivers, bits and stuff I want for cameras. So it takes those things fine. But whereas in the RT, if I was going away for the weekend, I just pack I have a brown bag I use, just shove it in, close the pannier. I can't do that on the Goldwing. It is too small. So I have to be a little more considerate on how I pack stuff. I tend to pack small and light anyway, so it just means a bit of reconfiguration, so it isn't a massive problem, but the panniers on the RT are significantly better than they are on the Goldwing. The third area where the RT is arguably better, now I'm going to use the term arguably because this is a bit more subjective, and that is its weight and agility. So there's no debate about that the RT is, for its size, a very agile bike. Now these are both heavy bikes, but the RT handles way, way better, especially in dynamic mode, than it has any right to. I think one of the surprises for everybody who jumps on RT is actually how much fun it is in dynamic mode. In road mode, it wallows a bit. I've heard people say different tyres transform the handling, but I always use road for general riding, motorway riding, great economy in road mode. But if it got, once the road started to twist around, then you'd find it drifting a little bit. So put it in the dynamic, everything firms up, throttle becomes a bit sharper, and great fun. And it's a very agile bike. To the point actually I was finding myself actually pushing it probably harder than I should do. And I had one or two moments where I'd slightly overcooked it, but different story, that's just down to me, not down to bike. The Goldwing is more of a Grand Tourer. The weight is centralised into the middle, so it's got that Honda mass centralisation they talked about donkeys years ago when they first brought it in. So everything is centred into the middle, and you feel that, which gives it very, very good handling, again, for the size of the bike. But it's a different handling. It does not have that agility or that flickability. It is far more of a planning bike. You've got to plan your routes. You've got to ride the thing. And if you want to get a Spirit on, I find it as much fun as I did the RT, but I find that fun is delivered in a different way. I also find with the Goldwing that I ride probably slightly slower, which is no bad thing for me. But if you're looking for a Grand Tourer that is agile, it's the RT. You're looking for a Grand Tourer that is steady, that's the Goldwing. I don't find the Goldwing as wallowy as the RT in road mode, but the nature of the bike is different, so maybe I'm being unfair to the RT here, but I find the Goldwing feels more solid, so you don't get that wallow. It doesn't drift. As long as you're deliberate with it, it rides quite nicely, but it is a different riding experience. This is why I say that this is a bit more subjective than the other two. So those are three areas where I think the RT is better than the Goldwing. The other additional one I would put into, I think, is looks. I think the RT is a really nice looking bike. I love the front of it. It's a really, I think, very sharp looking, and in the blue that I had, by far the best colour. The Goldwing, on the other hand, from certain angles, I would say is pig ugly, especially the engine. And my engine's quite nice. It's red. It looks quite nice, but you can't hide the fact that it sticks out and it's ugly. Three areas then where I think the Goldwing is a better motorcycle than the RT. So number one would be comfort. One thing that surprises many people when they jump onto an RT is actually how about the riding position is slightly more cramped than you would expect for a bike that's aimed at touring. And if, like me, you tend to ride on your toes and have to deliberately move my feet to rest my feet on pegs, the leg position, and I'm just over 5'11", is slightly more compact, and on a long journey can get uncomfortable quicker than I find on the Goldwing. Now, no bike is going to be so for comfort, you stretch your legs out. The one exception would be my Harley Street Glide, where I had the road pegs fitted so I could stretch my feet out. Very nice. Not comfortable for long, and got wind whistle up your legs, but that's the only bike I've had where I can really stretch my legs out. So these are differences in millimetres, but I do find the Goldwing a slightly more comfortable bike, and especially on those longer, more boring journeys for me down the A9. Then it has that slightly more relaxed riding position, and with the legs I find more comfortable. I've also fitted a backrest to mine, which is something I had on my Harley and quite liked, and it just means you can just sort of push your back and get some support. So I really like that and was pleased with the investment. So I do find the Goldwing a slightly better riding position and more comfortable, and certainly the RT is not uncomfortable, but the seat on the Goldwing is sofa comfortable. So that's one area. The second area where I think the Goldwing is much better than the RT is the tech. So on the RT, that is cutting edge. You've got your screen, which is 10.25 inches, loads of information on it, and more information you need, but lots of really good information. But you access many things through menus, which lots of commentators have said is a bit of a faff. And while it has the buttons down the side, on the left side you've now got 4 buttons which you can program, which the original bikes, or when they were launched, you couldn't do that, but they did a software update. So those buttons are programmable, which makes life a lot easier than having to, say, go through a menu in the wheel to turn your heated grips on or your heated seat on. I think the biggest downside of the tech for the RT, and many would disagree with this, but is the fact you access the majority of it through an app on your phone. So as I found, and many others have found, it was better with the RT to have a separate phone. So I had my own main phone, and then I had a separate phone dedicated just for the bike. That meant I could separate out the app and the operation of the bike. I could plan routes, do all sorts of things. It also meant when I stopped to fuel up, I didn't have to take my phone out and disconnect it. A lot of the problems of the software with the RT are down to the connectivity between the phone and the bike. And one of the routines you have to go through an RT is, before you set off, whether that be for getting fuel or start the day or whatever reason you stop for, is you have to wait until the phone connects to the bike. You can just shoot off. I always found that if I did that, I would have to stop, turn everything off, probably reset the phone and put it back in. So it's worth your while waiting with the RT until it's all connected. It doesn't take too long. I mean, I thought it was a couple of minutes. Someone informed me a while ago it was 90 seconds. But when you're waiting and your mates are all there and they're all waiting for you, and especially as I've seen, if you're the leader of the group and you're sitting there waiting, you just can't go off. You have to wait until it all connects up. And while it connects up now, probably 80-90% of the time, maybe more than that, there are always times it didn't. There's always times, especially the wireless connection, which you need to look at the maps. The Bluetooth will always connect fairly quickly, but the wireless, that's what takes the time. And while I got used to it and didn't mind it, it was a faff. It was a faff that I wanted. I mean, I actually wanted this tech. I just found it at times irritating. And that's not about it not working. I just found it quite a faff to operate. Having said that, I did at the end find the sat-nav really good. It was very clear. Didn't always have the details of stuff, and by that I mean if I'm riding past a lock, it didn't have the name of the lock, which is sometimes nice to know, but all the route details were there. The tech on the Goldwing is all integrated, so it's a bit like a big car. You don't need an app on your phone, you don't need a phone. It's got a very good cubby hole in the tank where it doesn't matter what size your phone is, and on the RT you can only have a standard size phone in the cubby hole. On the Goldwing I can get any phone in, and I have one of these things. It's big and it's chunky, and that fits in without any problem at all. It's not wireless charged, it's a fixed charge. Charge is fine on a long journey, and everything connects up without an issue at all. I have had not a single problem. On the RT, I didn't have any music capability apart from the connectivity through the phone. In the 15 months I had it, I never got it to work. Never got it to work consistently, properly, keep going. There was always something didn't work. If I muted it, I couldn't get it to go back, or it broke the connection with the helmet, or whatever it did. And it was one of those sources of frustration because I like music when I'm riding. The tech in general, because it is all integrated, most of the controls you're riding are on the left handlebar. And while it looks complex, it's actually very intuitive, very easy to use. And the more I do, the more I use it, the more I get used to it, the less I think about it. So that's the second area. Absolutely, the tech, far better. I think the thing for me that brings it home about why it's so much better is that when I stop for gas, I fill up. It's a weird thing, by the way. Unclick, click. Start the engine and I go. If I've got sat nav going, within not long, it's up and running. It's not instant. It initializes and then it puts the route in. But within no time that I noticed, it's up and running. And I was riding last week. I went down to Glasgow to have my bike serviced and stopped at Starbucks and had a drink, and then got back on the bike, turned it on. The route I had in it wasn't, the nav was initiating, but by the time I got to the first roundabout, which was less than a minute away, and needed a direction, it was up and it was working. RT, I've had to, but I'll still be standing in the car park. So it's far better. The third area where the Goldwing is better than the RT, and actually I'm going to say better than any other bike, the genius that is the Dct Gearbox. So it's not actually an automatic, it just does the gear change for you. When I tested the bike, I tried both a geared bike and a DCT bike, knowing that if I bought new, I had to have a DCT. If I wanted to have a manual bike, then I needed to have buy a used bike, which I could have done. Great. The gearbox on the RT is good, and then the Gearbox Pro is excellent, except at low speed where it is still pretty clunky, and I would always use the clutch. No real hardship. But the DCT on the Honda is so much better. Oh my God, how good is that? It's smooth, its low speed manners are impeccable. Filtering through traffic, which I've done a little bit of now. I was riding into Glasgow, very thick traffic, and did some filtering. Bike filters fine. And in fact, one advantage of the slightly narrower panniers is it filters very easily. But the DCT, I suppose when I was entering that sort of bit of traffic, and I've always filtered riding the clutch, I was a little bit anxious about what it'd be like. Within seconds I realised it's always in the right gear, it's always controlled, and it's fabulous. So there you have it. That's my summary of my first impressions of the Goldwing. I can't help comparing it to the RT, which is the bike the Goldwing replaced. So further ride outs coming up, and I hope you're all well. I hope you'll enjoy it. Take care.